beautiful cumulus clouds. It is the ravishing beauty of the mountains. It is the gorgeous sound of the music. It is the delight of the children.
We all know the sound of music as a refined, ageless classic. But what if there were concealed errors in plain sight? One sequence in particular was never cut, and once you see it, the scene is forever seared into your brain. That tiny glitch is only the first. From stilted cuts that disrupt the rhythm to strange details that are out of place, we've revealed 13 unexpected bloopers that made their way into the finished movie. They're subtle at first, but once spotted, they alter the way you view forever. Are you ready to take a closer look? Behind the hillside magic, one of the most memorable shots in movie history is Julie Andrews twirling on top of sun-drenched meadow, arms wide, singing the title song, The Sound of Music. It seems effortless enough, but behind that stunning shot were a series of technical headaches, physical discomfort, and even irritation from locals. In order to get the sweeping vista, the crew used a helicopter-borne camera, an unconventional method in the mid-1960s. The cameraman was tied to the plane, flying directly for Andrews as she danced in the empty field. The catch? Helicopters make a tremendous amount of noise. Andrews couldn't pick up the signals to start singing and spinning. So choreographer Mark Bro knelt in the bushes with a megaphone, yelling orders over the din of the rotors. Every time the helicopter flew overhead, its downdraft was so strong that it knocked Andrews off her feet, propelling her into the grass. She would later joke that she was always spitting dirt and hay. It took 6 or 7 takes to get a usable shot, each try with Andrews blown over by the wind. Not even nature cooperated. The breathtaking views belonged to a farmer who had at first consented to leave the tall grasses intact for the shooting. When the crew came back, however, the grass had already been cut, and they were forced to quickly craft the scene out of less dramatic blades. The crew constructed an artificial brook and even transplanted trees for Andrews to dance among. The farmer understandably had it up to here as the shooting took forever, particularly since helicopters and crew were irritating as cattle. But the payoff? Magic. So many greens, glistening brooks, and the veneer of spontaneity. Actually, it was a tight ship, even by new planning standards. The shot itself became the picture that summarized the film itself, reminding us all that what appears natural on screen is rarely so without the greatest of exertions. You thought helicopters were dangerous? The next shot took danger a little closer to the actors themselves. When injuries formed the film while The Sound of Music is recalled as its finished charm, all was not quite as it seemed during production. Some of the most iconic sequences were achieved at the expense of the actors' physical health, and others were modified during editing to enhance pace. All these modifications transformed the ultimate film in ways that the audience would never dream. The most catastrophic on-set accident concerned Charmian Carr, who portrayed Liesel. While performing this 16 going on 17 number, she danced with Daniel Truitt within the glass-enclosed gazebo. While wrapping the production late in the shooting, Carr slipped on the wet floor, fell, and smashed through a sheet of plate glass. She hurt her ankle severely enough to need bandaging. Instead of holding up the production, the staff treated her quickly, camouflaged the wound with makeup, and hidden her movements so that they could finish the shot. The on-location gazebo posed another challenge. The actual structure in Salzburg proved too cramped for filming, so the crew went ahead and constructed a larger replica on the Fox backlot in L.A. for greater convenience of camera movement. Julie Andrews, as well, imposed her own subtle but lasting signature on the music of the score. At the conclusion of Do Re Mi, she had inserted a note above an octave of what was written in the score. Afterward, she described it as being because she simply could reach it. That decoration became nearly one of the defining moments of the song. Although unfortunately, Andrews lost her upper range following a failed throat surgery in 1997. Censorship also redefined the pace of the film because some scenes shot lingered on the cutting room floor. Rolf being introduced to Maria by Liesel, the captain's sole performance of Edelweiss in the garden. As recalled by director Robert Wise, they were clearing the slowing pace of the story. These edits and tighter transitions established a more dynamic tempo for the film. Improvisation, injuries, and careful editing all contributed to bringing forth what audiences today perceive as this seamless event. The result may seem spontaneous, but it is crafted out of determination, swift thinking, and fearless choices behind the scenes. The phenomenon nobody expected when The Sound of Music premiered in 1965, nobody expected a runaway phenomenon. Initial word was split. Some critics dismissed it as old-fashioned as Hollywood began to shift toward grittier material. But audiences responded with deafening enthusiasm. In 4 weeks, it rose to number 1 at the box office, then just refused to depart. By 1966 late, it had overtaken Gone with the Wind as the highest-grossing film of all time, a position that it kept for 5 years. Altogether, it sold over 283 million tickets across the world, and its initial runs and 2 big re-releases earned around $286 million back then. The astronomical sums for a musical. It shattered box office and attendance records in 29 nations and, in most cities, played on screens for 4.5 years. What fueled that longevity wasn't just the postcard landscapes and earworm music. It was the film's emotional coherence. The narrative combined romance, family, and moral backbone in a way popular audiences could grasp immediately, and Julie Andrews' luminous presence and crystalline singing grounded every frame. Families would continue to return because the film ticked every box for repeat viewing. For kids, the Von Trapps most liked illustrating how to truly play. In other situations, love was better than authoritarian abandonment silhouettes that darkened into shadows. Publicity expanded by word of mouth, becoming communal view parties where viewers sang quietly, then would go on to invite their friends. The Sound of Music was as comfortable on screen as it was in living rooms. Its music filled the airwaves, its locations attracted pilgrims to Salzburg, and its images from Julie Andrews spinning on the mountaintops to the family's ultimate mountain flight remained icons of joy, strength, and liberty. This was the route through years of tearing down social blinds. Nights in the glow of the projection screen offered uplift without naivety, but sometimes reminded the crowds that this might accommodate tenderness as well as defiance. Greater than box office returns, its success demonstrates that a project once questioned by insiders was truly an event outside audience projections. Julie Andrews. The ideal gamble. When the producers of The Sound of Music started to cast Maria, they were presented with a dilemma. Screenwriter Ernest Lehman was convinced there was only one woman who could impart warmth, humor, and sincerity to the character, Julie Andrews. He was so sure that he reportedly declared, "As far as I'm concerned, there's only one person to play this role." In 1964, Andrews wasn't yet a household name. She had just completed Mary Poppins and the Americanization of Emily, neither of which had been released, and she was still best known for her stage work in My Fair Lady and Camelot. Hollywood executives were less convinced. Jack Warner had notoriously rejected her for the movie version of My Fair Lady on the grounds that she wasn't photogenic enough to make it on the screen. Studio chiefs circulated lists of bankable stars. Among them were Doris Day, Grace Kelly, Shirley Jones, Angie Dickinson, and Bancroft, Carol Lawrence, and Leslie Caron. Mia Farrow auditioned several times for a young part. Any one of them might have altered the legacy of the film. But the one thing that Robert Wise possessed was a secret weapon. He had seen some of the preliminary footage of Mary Poppins prior to its actual release and immediately saw Andrews as a star. He rushed in to sign her up before other rival studios realized it for themselves. Andrews signed the contract for the part at a mere $225,000, a respectable sum, of course, but no share in profits. When she would soon be commanding $1 million a film, this contract would have made her seem all the more underrated. The mention of Andrews does, however, give way to another worry regarding this particular role. Her very first question to Wise was, "How are you going to remove all the sugar out of this image?" She felt, you see, that the film was going to be extremely, extremely sentimental, and she wanted to have confidence that all the sugar was going to be getting balanced out. In fact, that instinct was quite important. Her down-to-earth sweetness prevented the film from becoming saccharine instead of sincere. It's an easy decision now. In fact, though, Julie Andrews' casting was a daring gamble. A gamble that made a rising star a legend and gave up a performance that would be numbered among the finest of cinema. Christopher Plummer's reluctant yes, as Julie Andrews was soon contracted to play Maria. Finding the correct actor to play Captain George Von Trapp was much more difficult. The actor who ultimately became the stern naval officer with his warmth hidden beneath, Christopher Plummer, came close to turning down the role several times. The character as written seemed too rigid and two-dimensional to him at first glance. He called the captain a cardboard cutout of an authoritarian father, and Plummer was not interested in portraying a flat stereotype. The studio tried out other A-list names. Sean Connery, Richard Burton, Bing Crosby, and Yul Brynner were all considered as leads. Each had star power, but none seemed quite to balance out authority and vulnerability. Plummer, reluctant as he was, remained their first choice. However, he would not sign up until changes were made. Plummer actually sat down and wrote to screenwriter Ernest Lehman, explaining his issues. He desired Von Trapp to be more than a strict disciplinarian. He needed layers. He made a case for the captain being worldly, debonair, and able to laugh. But, he continued, let the progressively softening of his heart be through the influence of Maria. He also requested different types of scenes, severe with Elsa, sweet with Maria. In a big way, this was acceded to by the creation team. Lehman and director Robert Wise reworked significant scenes to emphasize this depth, and Plummer afterwards confessed that those revisions allowed him to fully commit to the role. He even lobbied for a solo musical number, wanting to reveal the captain's inner turmoil through song. Not all of his ideas made it into